Hi everyone, this is Niladri, and today we are going to talk about the Agile Triangle. If you have got a solid foundational concept on Agile Triangle, then it will be easy for you to appreciate most of the fine things in Agile. So to start with, let's have a look into the Waterfall Triangle. In the Waterfall Triangle, or the conventional project management model triangle, we have got three sides which we normally call as triple constraints, and they are scope, time, and cost. Here in the diagram, the scope is shown as features, which is fine. And you will see the scope is fixed in the waterfall model and the time and the cost are variable. So that brings to a conclusion that the waterfall method of project management works extremely well when the scope is crystal clear, when we know the scope from the beginning of the project. And we can always adjust the time and the cost, and that will always move the quality up or down. Okay, now let's have a look into the Agile Iron Triangle. Now that is not exactly the Agile Triangle. That's a subset of the full-blown Agile Triangle, which I'm going to come soon. So Agile Iron Triangle, it's a flipped version of the Waterfall Triangle. And here what we see, the scope or the feature set is variable, and the time and the cost are fixed components. Which brings us to the conclusion that Agile method works extremely well for projects, especially those on which we are working for a new product development. And the scope is ambiguous. We are not having a crystal clear scope baseline from the beginning. Now a question may come to your mind is that if the scope itself is ambiguous, okay, then how come the time and the cost are fixed? How can we fix the time and cost when the scope itself is ambiguous? The answer is that the Agile flip triangle or the iron triangle is not looking at the project as a full-blown project, which means from the start date till the end date. It's rather dividing the project into numerous iterative cycles. Like one of the Agile methods is Scrum, okay? And where we do Scrum after Scrum, where the execution cycle is called sprint, okay? So each iterative cycle will be done like Scrum 1, Scrum 2, Scrum 3, okay? And then we are going to reach to the deliverables for the project. So in this flip triangle, the time and the cost are fixed for each iterative cycle. Now, as per pure Agile, if you look at the execution process of a Scrum, which is called sprint, then the minimum number of days for a sprint is 2 weeks, and the maximum number of days for a sprint is 4 weeks. If you are having a project on which you are being asked to develop, say, 100 features in a span of, say, 10 sprints, then you can divide those sprints like each 4 weeks, okay? And you can say that on each sprint how many features you are going to complete, and you can put a dollar value or a euro value for each of the sprints or the entire scrums. So once again, the flipped iron triangle of Agile actually shows that the time and cost is fixed per iterative cycle and the scope is variable. Now, how come the feature set is dynamic in Agile? How come it keeps on changing? Why can't it be fixed? The reason is that Agile is aiming to release the product sooner in the market with a baseline of critical features, which we call the minimum marketable feature. Now, suppose in one sprint, which is of 4 weeks, you are going to release, say, 5 features of the 20 set feature. Okay, then the remaining 25, the remaining like 15 features may change after 1 month, depending on the competition, the change in the user behavior, the cost of the technology, and so on and so forth. Okay, so that's why the feature set in Agile keeps on changing. It's dynamic. Okay, however, we can fix the time and cost per iterative cycle. And that brings us to one more statement, that in Agile, if you look at the contract, okay, the contracts are basically a kind of a contract based on few iterative cycle. The customer can sign up a contract for say 10 iterative cycle and then again renew the contract if at all he needs more features as a version kind of release for the product. Now let's have a look into the full-blown Agile Triangle, which is the discussion for today. So in a full-blown Agile Triangle, you will see there are three corners of the triangle. On the top is value, bottom left quality, and bottom right is constraints. And let's have a hard look into each of them and understand what they are. So value, number one. Value in Agile is not exactly your revenue generation. Of course, it's a component of it, but it's not the sole and only thing. Value in an Agile Triangle is equal to your end user delight. Okay, so if you are producing a very high-end kind of feature which gives a delightful experience to the end user, that means it's a high valued feature. Okay, so value in the Agile Triangle is your end user delight, and that is the ultimate goal of any Agile project, to give end user delight. Now if you can achieve end user delight with the help of a high valued feature, okay, then definitely it's going to generate the revenue, it will build the customer base, it's going to reduce the cost, it will reduce the risk, and so on and so forth, right? Now let's have a look into quality on the bottom left. Now how come the quality is one corner of the triangle? Okay, now let's have a look back into the waterfall, where quality was kind of treated as a single standalone guy. In the planning stage in the waterfall, we have done a complete quality management, and we have derived the quality assurance, which was followed in the execution stage, and in the monitoring and control process we have followed the quality control, right? Of course we had the concepts of the verification and validation. However, quality in the waterfall is still a standalone guy. It's kind of treated as the next step after your coding is done. Once your coding is completed, then quality comes into picture, provided the process is correct. In Agile, it's a paradigm shift. What happens here is that the quality is an intrinsic part of the execution cycle. So for each of the iterative cycle that you're looking at, like sprint 1, sprint 2, sprint 3, okay, each of them is going to work on the quality standards and the quality control and the verification and validation to make sure your featured set value is actually high. And why are we aiming that? Because howsoever high value feature you give to an end user, if that feature is having an error or a flaw or a bug, then it's of no value or brings no end user delight, right? So in order to achieve end user delight, you need to create a feature of high value with high quality. And that's a must in Agile. Now, coming to that, if you can achieve high quality in every iterative cycle, that will automatically reduce the technical debt, okay, and that will also make sure that your experience of the user is very high, because you are providing the user a high feature and which is having a high quality, so automatically end user delight is there. Okay, for instance, say for a high-end mobile phone, you're giving a very a high valued kind of feature like Wi-Fi charging. Okay, now that Wi-Fi charging, though it sounds very promising, still it may not hold end user delight if you are putting the phone for 5 minutes of charging and it gets overheated. So there is a flaw there, and the user will not be delighted when using that high profile feature. So it adds no value. Okay. Now coming down to the bottom right corner of the triangle, which is constraints. Constraints are scope, cost, and time. Okay. Now in the waterfall, we have seen the scope, cost, and time are basically three sides, and we have zoomed in the scope, cost, and time, the relationship in Agile in the Agile Iron Triangle. Now, why do we say the scope, cost, and time in Agile is a constraint? So think of it as a boundary in the project. So suppose you are planning to give a very high profile kind of feature, say Wi-Fi charging, in a base model of a phone, right? Now, that will definitely not add value to the end user. And why not? Because you are going to spend more cost to the project to get that feature, which will obviously increase the cost of the product, and that will decrease the end user delight. Because here the target audience for a base phone model is not a high profile customer who is going to pay more money to get that high profile kind of feature like Wi-Fi charging. Okay, so constraints are treated as your boundaries. Are you within the time? Are you within the budget or cost? And are you within the scope of the project? And then you are delivering the high end user delight value feature to the customer, which has got high quality. Okay, so constraints are the boundaries, quality is the intrinsic thing, and value is the aim of the agile, which is the extrinsic feature as well. I hope now things are clearer to you, and thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. That's all from my end. Wish you all a great time. Cheers.